Good morning. Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We are a spiritually alive, justice-centered, and radically inclusive community. And we are so glad that you are joining us both here in this main hall sanctuary and online. My name is Lori Cross, and I am your Sunday associate this morning. I do have a few announcements, but before I make them, this would be a good time for two things. One, to silence your devices, and two, to extend a warm welcome, feel free to stretch while you do it, to anyone with whom you did not commute here this morning. Go ahead. Hello. So I do have a few announcements. A couple of them are in the back of your order of service, and I want to highlight them, but there's at least one that is not in the order of service. Okay. So there is a movie showing this afternoon at 2. Back of your order of service for detail. It looks fun. There will be a talent show in 2 weeks. It'll be on Saturday the 1st at 3. No, this is not an April Fool. They are putting on a talent show. 100% organized by the kids, so let's show them support. Additionally, continuing our Muff Icon theme, 2 weeks from today, we will feature our next Odyssey Project film subject, our own Beth Wilson, so please join us coming out in support of her. Finally, I want to say, as a partial promotion of the talent show, one of our young men, his grandma told me how to pronounce his last name. I hope I get it right. I think I won't. Eric Mencius will be joining us to play our postlude this morning. He will be playing part of a Bach prelude. So please linger a moment this morning at the end of the service to enjoy the playing by this young man.
Good morning. I'm Joel Miller. I'm the interim minister here at the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm so glad to welcome you, whether you're in the library with children or perhaps in the salon, online, here in the meeting room. So glad you're here. We've had an exciting weekend here at the fellowship. We have new members, and some who are here at this service, some who will be at the later service. And one of the things I talked about yesterday with the new member workshop that we had in the morning was that sense of restlessness that sometimes we feel, that sense of discomfort, sometimes even outrage at something that might be wrong in the community or wrong being done to someone, or perhaps there's so many different words to describe it. And we've in ministry, we use the word call, this sense of calling. In some traditions, in some Christian traditions, calling is something that happens when one's going to become ordained. But in Unitarian Universalism, to be called is something that happens to all of us in some way. The first time I knew I was called was different. Even though I had felt called before, I didn't realize it. It was just something was off. I was supposed to do something, and I didn't know what it was. And then there was this one night. I was having a rough night. I'd broken up, a romance hadn't worked out. I had work that I thought I loved, but I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I had questions I couldn't answer. And I didn't really like some of the choices I was making in my life, I gotta say. I later found out some of the choices I was making more because I'm an alcoholic, so I was making choices about drinking I shouldn't have been making. I needed to go for a walk. I had a lot of energy. I'm walking around streets that I grew up in, streets that my ancestors had once farmed, and the land they had farmed it. Just trying to get some energy off. It's 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm trying to go to sleep. I'm walking, just frustrated. And I stopped at a big intersection in the neighborhood, 2 cross streets. And there's this park on one of the corners, and I'm just standing looking at the park. I was thinking, I'm going to sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want to keep walking. And I kind of like, what should I do? Just about like that. Now, I got an answer. Mind you, when I was growing up, I was a humanist Unitarian Universalist. I really didn't believe in God at all. That was really not my thing. I wasn't even real sure about the whole religious thing itself. And later on in theological school, I read in this one book, Isaiah, about how the mountains rose up and the trees were clapping their hands. And I thought, the first time I read that, I thought, that's weird. And then I thought, no, wait a minute, I've seen that before. It was on that street corner in that moment. There was this presence that came out of the park, the trees in the park, the ravine behind the park. And it was like a presence. And here I had just thrown my hands out like, what should I do? And the presence says to me, live. Live. Go live life. Be alive. Be fully alive. And the first thing I thought was I drinking just now? And I hadn't been drinking. I thought, wow, that's unusual. And then I was like, okay, I know I'm really agitated. By this time, I don't need to walk anywhere. I'm like, what? I was upset. Maybe that's like endorphins. I'd been reading, I remembered a biology class or something from college, and it was like, oh yeah, endorphins. That's that thing in the brain where you get a little chilled out and relaxed. You know what? That's a pretty good answer. I don't care if it's endorphins or not. Who cares where it came from? Whatever that was. So I decided, okay, I'll live. What I didn't understand in the moment, but I came to understand was I'd also been called, because in choosing to live, to really live fully, I had to say yes to life in a way I hadn't quite anticipated. I've had other mystical experiences like that. I don't go looking for them on purpose because there's usually some obligation that comes along with them, but it's an amazing experience to just say yes to the call, however it comes to any of us. I'm going to think about, what is your calling? What might you be called to as Unitarian Universalists? Good morning and welcome. So glad to have you all here. Levi, would you like to come up and help me light the chalices? I invite you to say the words of our affirmation this morning. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I'd like to invite you to sing together now. In body or in spirit, I invite you to stand. If you're using the book, number 1040, you should have the words if you're online. You can have the words here on the screen. I have a story I'd like to tell this morning, and I invite children, youth, adults, anybody who's young at heart in some way to come up and help me tell this story this morning. I am so glad to see you guys this morning. We're so glad you're here. We're talking about what is it as Unitarian Universalists, what are we supposed to do in the world? I've always had a feeling there's something I'm supposed to be doing. And usually I feel like I'm doing it when I get to come to the fellowship. I'm here in the congregation with the other people here, the members, the friends, the folks who are our guests, visitors. It feels right to me. I feel very lucky. I feel a sense, like I was talking earlier, that there's a calling. There's a story in some writings by the Jewish people from a long, long time ago. It's a book called Elijah. And the way I remember this story is Elijah is, well, he's in some trouble because he has been saying to people, the way the queen is choosing to do things is not right. It's not fair to other people. She shouldn't hoard all the money for herself. He was saying this out in the middle of town. Well, the queen was not very happy about this, and she wanted to make him stop. Actually, she was going to do worse than that, probably. So he had to run away, and he had to hide. So he went up into the mountains, and he found a cave, and he hid in the cave. And he was in the cave, and he's sitting there thinking, stupid queen. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe I should have just been quiet. And then he hears something, and he's not sure what it is. And then suddenly, there's this great wind outside the cave, and it's blowing really hard. Back and forth, and he's like, wow, what is that? Is this an answer to my question? Like, why am I here? Should I have even done any of that? It stops. He's like, I wonder what that's supposed to mean. And then all of a sudden, there's this big fire that goes by. Everything's burning on the side of the mountain. And Elijah's like, I'm glad I'm in the cave. I'm glad I'm not out there. And then there's a big earthquake, and everything's shaking. Big boulders rolling down the side of the mountain, dust everywhere. But there wasn't any answers on all of the earthquakes and the fires and the strong winds. But then Elijah hears a still small voice. It's almost like it's kind of within himself. And the voice says, Elijah, what are you doing here? What was Elijah doing in the cave? He was hiding. Later, I'm going to tell a story about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He had a similar kind of experience. Kind of like that story that I was telling earlier when I had a question. What should I be doing? And said, live. Each of you, I think, might get different answers if you were to ask a question like that. That's part of what we're looking for here at the fellowship. Part of the reason for you to be in class is part of the reason we sing together. See what happens when we ask questions that have different answers. If you were in kindergarten or first grade, or fourth to fifth grade, or sixth and seventh grade, you will meet together in room 204. So we're going to sing you to your classes now. Would you like to carry the challenge? Spirit of life, come unto me. Singing in my heart, all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life shape of justice, bruised holy clothes, wings set me free, Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. We light the chalice. We hopefully enlighten something within ourselves in remembering the symbol and how so many times we brought ourselves together around the symbol and around the meaning within it. The sense of light, of enlightenment, of knowledge, of understanding, of hope. We create community. We're creating community around these symbols. We give our children a chalice that they carry with them to understand that community can extend across space and time. And at this time of milestones and passages, it is a ritual for us to remember that we all come at times with great joys and great sorrows, struggles and successes. And sometimes it's just enough to be together, whether through the online ways that we can be present to one another in the rooms next to this room, in this very room. The shared presence matters, even if how we share is without words. Our presence changes lives. Also this morning, we have the great joy to welcome 10 new members. We have a wonderful welcoming program and a ministry, really. Some of us are called to welcome those who come looking for us and the first time they walk through the door. And so I have asked Carrie Davis to read some words of welcome to our newest members, and ask Mia Gomez to say the names of our newest members at this time.
We welcome you as once we were welcomed ourselves. We seek to be open and inclusive, respecting your inherent dignity, your ideas, and your vision, in times when it is easy and in times when it is difficult. We seek to be supportive, not only when you reach out in courage to us, but also when you need us to reach out to you. In return, we ask that you recognize our humanity. We will not always live up to our ideals. And when we fall short, we invite you to stay in relationship with us and help us more fully bring alive the spirit of love. We welcome you as an equal member of this congregation, of this faith, and of our shared spiritual journey.
And we'd like to congratulate our new members of Annalie Blanchard, Claudia Holt, Lisa Hatala, Barbara Lucas-Chin, Dylan Haas, Joe Hart, Gretchen Braunscheitel, Jenna Diefenbacher and Kylie Garabet, and Jen Archibald.
If any of our newest members would like to stand at this time, we'd love to welcome you. And gratitude, Carrie is our board trustee for member engagement, and Mia and Noelle are co-chairs of our welcoming team. Invite you to join it now in a spirit of meditation or contemplation or prayer, as is best for you. O dear great lathe of heaven, foundry of souls and soulfulness, you churning, burning cosmos, which has wrought us on the infinite loom of your celestial body. Spinning stars and different stones, hear our prayers. Please don't curse us to perish with our dreams fulfilled. Please, no, don't afflict us with visions so narrow, hearts so small that our greatest hopes could be accomplished within just one lifetime. Bless us with unquiet spirits. Anoint us with impertinent oils. Grant us dreams so big, so numerous, we might spend the fullness of our days to realize them, and even yet have so much unfinished, have so much left to do for those who follow. Holy presence that brings us to life and one day takes us home. Allow us the mercy to leave these lives with much unfinished business. This so that we may understand who we are and all that calls to us. Amen. So be it. Blessed be. I invite you to sing with me. Number 131, if you'd like to use the book, Love Will Guide Us. Please stand in body or spirit.
So before I begin my scheduled remarks, we do have one other wonderful, joyous milestone. Reverend Joel had a birthday this week. Dan, could you give us an E, please? E. Let's sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joel. Happy birthday to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. New members. That was Mike and me. He's running around back and forth between home looking for his phone right now. That's us, Mike and me. Some of you have heard the story. Mike and I tried a few places on Sundays when we bought our condo here in New Jersey. Heard great music at this place, great minister at that place. UU places, they had meditation groups. We have a lot in common. Services auction, book club. Then we came here. The last open morning before the COVID closures started. It wasn't just a warm welcome. We were gently brought from person to talk. Then finally, before the service, we were brought to the minister herself for yet another warm hello. We were treated with such care by such a number of people. It sealed the deal. What is this place? What is it meant to offer? We came to hear Allison. We came to be inspired, lifted up from our weekly cares, gather in the comfort of like-minded people. Allison interviewed me out on the lawn, because it was COVID, to find out more about me. She asked me about my interests and my experiences, and she explored that with me. That's how she brought me to the Odyssey Project and to the worship arts team. Places to share my gifts in a meaningful way. Right away, she made it her business to help me figure out how to make contributions that would celebrate and honor my unique talents. I think about each of you, each special and talented in their own way. Teaching, finance, organization, the possibilities are endless. But it was strange gathering, trying to actually get to know people. When it wasn't really gathering, it was watching TV. It was watching TV as a service, and then a TV coffee hour. Zoom meetings and masks. It was not easy to get to know people. Stresses. Okay, so then Allison, my touchstone, leaves. I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling a bit, lost. Now Joel is here helping us call someone. Call. It makes me think once again of a vocational or avocational calling, what we do well, what we love. One person might excel at building, another at playing the piano, another at crafting, another at gardening, or, heaven forbid, accounting numbers. But for me, being called is more. It's being asked to somehow rise up, rise above, be your highest self, bring your best game to each other. Find out about each other. Not wait till someone asks to get involved. Learn who they are and ask them. Cheerlead for them. When I have sung or spoken at a service and someone takes the time to thank me or email me, that means so much to me. It makes my day. That approbation, that validation of the worth of my gifts. I go back. I look at those emails more than once. They feel good. We are never too old or too accomplished for that kind of attention and support. It's part of honoring the inherent worth and dignity of each of us. I like to watch professional sports because I'm inspired by the tremendous effort it takes, not just professional, collegiate, March Madness. I'm for Princeton. Sorry for the interruption. Okay. I'm inspired by the tremendous effort it takes to try really hard and not give up. That, to me, is what we are, called to try hard with each other and not give up. We can all answer the call to minister to one another, to greet warmly, to listen with interest, to care about the other's thoughts and challenges, even like the athletes when the going gets tough. A friend, she's here, I will not tell you her name. You know who you are. We were walking at the Arboretum, and she said, one of the things she values most about the fellowship is the opportunity to peacefully work out differences and move on. I really liked that. Joel asked me to speak on New Member Sunday. Okay, I'm newer. And then I find he's going to speak about calling, and I'm like, what? How are those related? New members calling? All right. It finally hit me. For me, what ties together the two is this: honoring one another. It is a long, two-step process. The warm welcome of a stranger, bringing them into the safety of our fold, but keeping them, building the relationship, is about the calling of every one of us. The calling to celebrate and recognize each other with every encounter. Mike and I will have to speak to him, he's not here yet. We made a pact a long time ago. If one of us has been out on the town for a big part of the day, when they get home, it's the other person's job, the home person's job, to come give them a hug and a kiss. And we call each other out if somebody screws up. Not take for granted that they're back. Always give one another the warm welcome.
Our offering this morning will be split 50-50 with the Unitarian Universalist Ministry for the Earth, which seeks environmental justice, beloved community, and the flourishing of all life. You can donate via text to give number if you're online, or here with your smartphones. There are instructions in the order of service. Thanks for the birthday song. So just after he was ordained in 1948, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was asked to write about his call to ministry. And he described it this way: my call to the ministry was neither dramatic nor spectacular. It came neither by some miraculous vision or blinding light experience. It did not come as a sudden realization. Rather, it was a response to an inner urge that gradually came upon me. This urge expressed itself in a desire to serve God and humanity, and the feeling that my talent and my commitment could be best expressed through ministry. The more I tried to escape it, the more frustrated I would become. A few months after preaching my first sermon, I entered theological seminary. Sometimes ministers or actually clergy or religious leaders in most any tradition or movement will say to someone who seems to feel a call, will say, if you can do something else, try to do that first. Because it's a bit of a journey. And what comes with the call, the responsibilities, the depths of feelings, the power of the journey, sometimes it asks a lot. Something to think about as a congregation. You are in this process that has begun. Right now, selecting a search committee. And then the search committee will get very busy this summer, training first, and then interviewing you as a congregation, and then putting together a sort of portfolio of the congregation. And then on January 2nd, that committee will be so busy, very busy, reading the portfolios of ministers interested in serving the fellowship, perhaps sensing a call to serve this congregation. Selecting one out of all of those interviews to come and interview with you as an entire congregation for a week and then a few days, late April or early May, a year from this April and May. One of the things about being called, whether we're a Unitarian Universalist who's not necessarily ordained, but still has that sense of, there's a ministry I'm supposed to do, or perhaps for those of us who are called to do ministry, in a sense, minister to everyone's ministries. That's how I see my ministry. The essential test of knowing whether the call is something genuine or is perhaps something different is to confirm it with those you are in community with. So one of the reasons I love to tell the story about Elijah is that there's that great wind, there's the fire, there's the earthquake. And so sometimes there's a sense of longing, or perhaps there's this sort of mystical experience, but how do you know it's a good call? For me, there's two ways about it. One of them is that I've been, I don't know if I should say privileged, or maybe I just sort of needed the dude, hello, for those sort of grab your attention spiritual moments. I tend to think the latter, that I just really needed a little bit of focus. But ultimately, within myself, I test a call by the sense of, is it a small, still voice that calls me to be aware of others, to listen, to observe the world? Because if it is a still, small voice, I tend to trust it a lot more. But the final test is, what does the community say? What do the people, in my case as a minister, the people who called me, what do they say? Or the people I'm in relationship with, perhaps my colleagues, what do they say? I'm feeling called to do this. I'll check it out with them. And as I said, it's not unique to people who are ordained as religious leaders to sense a call. Teachers are said to have a call. Nurses and doctors and other medical practitioners have a sense of calling. Personally, I think a really good plumber has a sense of call. And those who are really great in the kitchen, like chefs, definitely have a call. You can taste it in the food. We're all called. And that's been a part of the Unitarian and Universalist traditions for centuries, the sense that we are all called. We all have ministries to do. It's not just a select few. We have too much to do. We can't just leave it to a minister or two that serve a congregation. Lives to be saved. And the thing about, I'm using this term which comes out of the Christian tradition, but here we are, we're people, yes, we have Christian roots in the traditions of Unitarianism and Universalism, but for centuries we have also been growing roots into other religions, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, earth-based religions, or even science and just the existential experience of being human for those of us who are more comfortable with the measurable and the here and now. So when we talk about a calling, it's important to think, a rabbi's not called in that traditional Christian sense. Or for those of us who meditate and practice Buddhism as Unitarian Universalists, there's not even a deity, really, in Buddhism that's vocalizing or calling in any sensible way. I think we just don't need gods or goddesses or pantheons to feel a sense of call. We can hear it in the voices of the people sitting next to us when we're together in worship on a Sunday morning, or the sound of our children as they laugh and play on the grounds around the building, or as we are in conversation with them in classrooms. We can all be called to ministries, even humanists and atheists. Sometimes it's very, very rewarding to have that sense of call. It's a sense of direction, of purpose. I know I am here. But sometimes I realize there's some sense of the call. So if you've read The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, in the second book, the young hobbit Frodo is asked by Bilbo Baggins and the wizard Gandalf to say yes to the call to return a powerful gold ring to the volcano where it was forged. It's the only place that this ring, which is a very problematic ring, it's the only place the ring can be destroyed, is in the volcano. So Frodo's getting a call, but this call is a terrible call, a call to leave the comfort of the Shire and journey through terrible danger, to save his entire world from the power of a terrible ring. And when he realizes he's being called, a great dread fell on Frodo, it says in the book. As if he were awaiting the pronouncement of some doom he had long foreseen and vainly hoped might, after all, never be spoken. An overwhelming longing to rest and remain at peace by Bilbo's side in Rivendell filled his heart. And at last, with an effort, he spoke and wondered to hear his own words as if some other will were using his small voice. "I will take the ring," he said, "though I do not know the way." Dr. King said yes to his calling and continued to say yes. And he too faced terrible risks. He answered that call when he knew his ministry would cost him his life. And Dr. King could have said no. I hope that I never get a call that asks me to do something that costly, to be honest. What would I say? Dr. King said yes to a ministry that risked his life. I've thought so much about what it meant for Dr. King to say yes, that last summer there was a a workshop for Unitarian Universalist ministers who are interim ministers like myself. And even though I've had the training twice in my 13 years as an interim minister, I went again because this training included a key section on anti-racism. So I went to Montgomery. I learned a lot about Dr. King. I saw the Dexter Street Church where he preached. I saw how he was part of those who created the Montgomery bus boycott and the violence that was around it and the intense commitment it took, not just on the part of the leaders, but an entire community of people, the black folks in Montgomery, Alabama, to stay true to that boycott. And eventually force the leaders of the city to allow them dignity and reasonable access to the bus system. Dr. King got death threats every night during the bus boycott, sometimes terrible threats. And I knew there was a moment where Dr. King really questioned whether he should be taking this kind of risk. His family at risk. I went to that parsonage of the Dexter Street Church where he lived with his family in 1956. One night he sat in the chair, I looked at that very chair he sat in the kitchen. The home was still closed because of the pandemic, but I'll be honest, I climbed the fence because I wanted to see it. I didn't get arrested, thank goodness. I had to see it. I went into the back, and there I could see through the back door of the Dexter Street parsonage, the chair where Dr. King sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands one night. One night when he was more shaken than usual by the threats that came in the phone. After his home had been bombed, his family at risk, Dr. King went to the kitchen, made a pot of coffee, put his hands on his face and prayed aloud, "Lord, I am trying here to do what's right, but I am afraid. I confess I am losing my courage." And then he said, having made that confession, I could hear an inner voice saying to me, "Martin Luther, stand up for truth. Stand up for justice. Stand up for righteousness. I will be at your side." And so he did. He did after he spoke with his wife, who said, "Yes, I'm called to with you. Yes." And they risked so much. 10 years later, Dr. King was speaking out against economic tyranny. He went beyond civil rights. He was speaking out against the war in Vietnam. He was speaking out in support of the sanitation workers' strike in Memphis. And it was in Memphis where he was assassinated. I think personally there was a reason for that, because he was working for the rights not just of black folks at that point, but working class white folks too. And I think somebody realized what would happen if Dr. King was able to forge a movement of hardworking rural white folks with hardworking urban black folks. Can you imagine a political figure today who would unite white Trump voters with voters who support the progressive Congressperson Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? That'd be a hell of a movement, wouldn't it? Maybe this is a confession or maybe this is a lament, but I can believe that the owners of some large American corporations, Pillow Guy especially, might actually want to kill someone who could bring America together this way. Howard Thurman, the great 20th century African-American writer, he was a minister, had a wonderful calling, led a congregation in San Francisco, California. He explained what it meant to say yes to our callings. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. Go do that, because that is what the world needs. The world needs people who have come alive. And Dr. King was choosing life when he said yes to his calling, even though it eventually would also mean the end of his life. And I've come to realize that had he said no to that call, he would have felt countless small deaths in the days and years that followed. To say no would have been more painful than it would have been to say yes. I'm grateful that I have a calling that hasn't asked so much of me, yet anyway. I like to think I would say yes. I'll be honest, if the time doesn't come and I never find out, that doesn't bother me so much, but could I live with myself if I said no? And if you feel that calling, as I said, you can always tell the difference between that genuine call from something, maybe it's holy, want to call it holy or something good, something that affirms life in some way. A genuine call. Yeah, that small, still voice, because it asks us to pay attention and look. But it's also going to be inconvenient. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. It'll require some genuine sacrifice. For me, the desire to be President of the United States is not a calling. The desire to serve the well-being of all the people in the United States, that's a calling. Howard Thurman wrote about this distinction. There's something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It's the best guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will spend the rest of your days on the ends of strings somebody else is pulling. So whether we are Muslim or Jewish or come out of a Native American tradition, or we practice Buddhism, or come out of a Hindu culture or Christian culture, or find ourselves to be atheist or humanist, we're called to be somehow lovers of life, defenders of what we cherish. In fact, that word community, that final test of whether our call is to serve the greater good. Remember that the meaning of the word, the original meaning of the word community, came out of this ancient words cum and munio. Cum meaning the word community, together, and munio, literally to minister together. Communio, community, to minister together. We create community because we are called to care for one another and the world around us. Especially out of this diversity that we are as Unitarian Universalists, it's amazing. The best test for me as somebody who is in this strange place where I have these mystical experiences in the presence of something I call God, and yet at the same time, this sense as a humanist that I want to test it, and I want it tested by peers. I want peer review. What better community to get that in than a community with Christians and atheists and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and people who don't want any label at all or just don't even know what to do with labels. What better verification of our calling than a community of peers with this diversity? Dr. King knew this call and lived his very life as a yes to this call, a call for us to live by principles of peace, virtues of generosity, to cherish one another in mutual appreciation. He lived for this and had life for this, life calling itself from us, through us, to one another again and again. And so to those of us who are the newest members, welcome. Welcome to this exciting journey. And to those of us who have welcomed them, I say thank you. Keep answering the call. It makes a difference, more than you know. I invite you to sing with me. This is number 112 if you like the book. The words are on the screen and should be available on your screens if you're watching at home or in the library. Do you hear?
Do you hear, oh my friend, in the place where you stand, through the sky, through the land? Do you hear, in the heights on the plain, in the vale on the plain, in the
the still small voice that speaks within you. May it help you open your hearts to one another, to a world that needs also to listen well. And may your callings give you full and amazing journeys. Fill your life with joys you can never imagine. Take the delight from this community. Go into a world that needs it. And go in peace, be in peace, and we'll be together again.